When God heals you, hell trembles. The most dangerous person to a narcissist is not the one who screams or exposes them. It's not the one who gets even or the one who cries out for justice in rage. No. The one they fear the most is the one who was once shattered by their manipulation, but then healed by the living God. That person, restored, steady, and no longer emotionally entangled, is not just healed, they are holy ground. The narcissist doesn't panic when you're still bleeding. They panic when you stop needing them. When you stop chasing closure, when you stop defending your worth, when you stop trying to convince them of your heart, they know something has shifted. And it's not just emotional, it's spiritual. You see, when God enters the story, everything changes. When He pulls you out of the fog and begins to rewire your heart and mind with truth, the narcissist feels it before you even understand it. They sense they're losing their grip. They feel your spirit returning to its rightful owner, and it terrifies them. Not because you've become bitter or vengeful, but because you've become free. You are no longer reactive, no longer fragile in their hands, no longer available for their cycle of confusion. You are no longer orbiting around their chaos. Instead, you've become grounded in something eternal. That is what makes you dangerous. This is not just a recovery story, it's a deliverance story. Because narcissistic abuse isn't only emotional warfare, it's spiritual captivity. And once God starts untying those soul ties, once He removes the veil and shows you who they really are, once He breathes new life into your identity, you don't just survive, you rise. You become a living threat to every lie they ever told. You carry light where there used to be trauma. And now, your peace isn't passive, it's powerful. It's the kind of peace that makes hell tremble, because you've become something the narcissist can no longer touch. A person fully claimed by God. Why the narcissist fears the one God healed. The narcissist doesn't fear the person who's still bleeding. They don't lose sleep over the one who is still trapped in confusion, desperate for answers, holding on to the hope that love will eventually be enough. That version of you was useful to them. That version was manageable, predictable even, because as long as you were trying to win their affection, as long as you were entangled in the false belief that your worth was tied to their validation, they remained in control, and control, to the narcissist, is oxygen. But what they never expected was that God would step into the story, that heaven itself would intervene in the very places where you were most broken, and begin to reclaim you, piece by piece, from the inside out. That the same heart they tried to fracture would become the dwelling place of God's Spirit. That your identity, once shattered, would be reborn in the fire of divine truth. They don't fear your rage. They've seen it, manipulated it, even provoked it. They don't fear your sadness. They fed off it. But they are terrified, yes, terrified, of your spiritual detachment, of that moment when your soul no longer waits for them to come back, when you stop justifying their cruelty, when you stop needing them to validate what you already know in your spirit. The moment you go quiet, not in despair, but in divine resolve, is the moment the narcissist realizes they've lost something they can't replace, access to your soul, because you no longer belong to the game. You're no longer emotionally tethered to their chaos. You're no longer dependent on their attention to feel real. The version of you they used to manipulate, the one who bent, who explained, who absorbed guilt like a sponge, that person has been laid to rest. And what rises in their place is a healed child of God, consecrated by fire and anchored in truth. And that kind of presence exposes them. It shines a holy light on their delusion and renders their weapons useless. What they once used to provoke you now falls flat. Their silence no longer tortures, it confirms your decision to walk away. Their words no longer slice. They ring hollow, as if spoken into a void. Because you are no longer seated at their table. You are seated at the table God prepared for you in the presence of your enemy. The healed version of you is not reactive. You're not chasing, defending, or performing. You are rooted. You are still. And that stillness is not apathy. It is power. It is the unmistakable evidence that you are no longer who they controlled. And in that stillness, God speaks for you. He vindicates you without a word. He stands between you and the trauma that once defined you. He lifts your head, dries your tears, and restores what they thought they had stolen for good. This is what the narcissist fears. Not that you left, but that you've been delivered. That your soul has escaped the prison they built from flattery, gaslighting, guilt, and false hope. That you've stopped bowing to their false sense of importance, and now bow only to the one true King. To be healed by God is to become a mirror they can't look into, a testimony they can't silence, a soul they can't touch. That is why the narcissist fears the one God healed. Not because you are loud or vengeful, but because you are free, and freedom, real freedom, is the loudest judgment of all. The healing process, how God steps in and rewrites the story. The healing of someone who's been wounded by a narcissist doesn't begin with self-help books or inspirational quotes. It begins with heartbreak. Deep, soul-wrenching heartbreak, the kind that leaves you gasping for air in the dark, wondering how someone you loved could hurt you so deliberately and feel nothing. It begins in that terrifying place where everything feels like it's unraveling. Your sense of self, your understanding of love, even your relationship with God. And in that moment, when the noise of betrayal is deafening, something unexpected happens. God speaks. Not in thunder, not in judgment. He speaks in a whisper, quiet, steady, and unmistakably holy. This is not where your story ends. You see, God doesn't step into the ruins of your life to simply patch things up. He comes to reclaim you. Because the narcissist didn't just steal your peace. They touched something sacred. Your identity, your trust, your ability to see yourself through God's eyes. That's where the real damage was done. They didn't just lie to you. They rewrote who you believed you were. And that's why healing takes more than distance. It takes divine intervention. Because what was wounded wasn't just your heart, it was your soul. So God begins his work not by asking you to be strong, but by giving you permission to break. He lets the tears fall. He allows the questions. He doesn't rush your grief. He sanctifies it. He sits with you in the silence they left behind, and as you cry out, not even knowing what you're asking for anymore, he begins to tear down every lie they built around you. The lie that you were hard to love, the lie that your feelings were too much, the lie that their behavior was somehow your fault. God dismantles them one by one, because he cannot heal what you're still defending. And this healing, it isn't linear, it isn't quick, it isn't clean, it is holy. Sometimes it looks like a slow return of clarity. Other times it looks like deep spiritual surgery. God goes into the root. He doesn't stop at the surface. He brings up things you didn't even realize were buried. Your childhood wounds, your people-pleasing habits, your fear of abandonment, your addiction to performance-based love. He brings it all to light, not to shame you, but to free you, because freedom always requires truth. And somewhere along the way, something sacred begins to shift. You stop asking God to bring them back, and you start asking him to bring you back. You stop begging for their apology, and you start praying for your peace. You stop trying to explain your worth to someone who never saw it, and you start letting God restore it, redefine it, resurrect it. You start to remember who you were before the confusion, before the gaslighting, before the slow erosion of your soul. But more than that, you start to become someone new. Not the old version of yourself before the pain, but the version forged in the fire. The version who walks with discernment now. The version who doesn't need to be needed. The version who hears God's voice louder than the accusations that once haunted your mind. This is not recovery. This is resurrection. This is what God does. He doesn't just help you survive the storm. He walks you out of the wreckage holding your hand and gives you a new name, a new voice, a new spirit. He gives you eyes that see. Not just the narcissist for who they are, but yourself for who he always knew you could be. He takes the very thing the enemy used to try and destroy you and makes it your testimony. So if you're in the thick of it, still bleeding, still shaking, still looking for clarity, don't run. Don't go numb. Don't give up. God has not forsaken you. He is not disgusted by your tears. He is not tired of your questions. He is near, closer than the breath in your lungs. He is already at work in you, even when you can't feel it. He's not just healing you, he's rewriting the story the narcissist tried to finish. Stop trying to fix what God is trying to separate you from. Stop waiting for the one who broke you to be the one who heals you. Turn your face toward heaven and say, God, I don't know how to heal this, but I trust you will. Because when you surrender the ashes, he doesn't just rebuild, he resurrects. The signs you've become dangerous to the narcissist. There comes a shift in the spirit long before it ever shows on the surface. The narcissist feels it first. Subtle, quiet, but undeniable. It's the moment when you stop playing your role in their carefully constructed drama. The moment when your energy no longer bends to their narrative, and your soul no longer flinches at their disapproval. It doesn't happen because you fought back or delivered the perfect final words. It happens when your spirit detaches, when your peace becomes rooted in something they can no longer reach. That's when you become dangerous, not in the way of violence or revenge, but in the sacred, unsettling way that exposes what was never real to begin with. One of the first signs is silence. But this is not the silence of fear or confusion. It is the silence of clarity. You are no longer reacting. You are no longer explaining. You are no longer offering your heart as a battlefield to be trampled by someone who never intended to protect it. The narcissist notices that you've gone quiet, but what unsettles them is the power behind that quiet. It doesn't beg. It doesn't bargain. It doesn't chase. It just stands. And they don't know how to manipulate stillness. They only know how to provoke chaos. So when you no longer respond to the bait, they are left with their own emptiness, something they've spent a lifetime avoiding. Another sign is that their words lose weight. What once crushed you now sounds hollow. The same insults, the same guilt trips, the same manipulative charm. They no longer penetrate because your identity is no longer built on their validation. You've stopped handing them the authority to name you. You don't need them to say you're enough. You already know that in the quiet, sacred places where God whispered it over your life in ways they will never understand, and because their power was always rooted in your self-doubt, your self-certainty now becomes their undoing. They cannot twist what is already anchored in truth. You also stop needing their storyline to be corrected. You don't care what they're telling people. You're not obsessed with proving your version, because deep down you realize that the truth doesn't need your defense. It stands on its own. And when your soul is resting in the knowledge that God saw everything, every manipulation, every half-truth, every hidden cruelty, you no longer waste energy trying to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. That unbothered grace, that refusal to fight in a war that no longer deserves your attention, unsettles them more than your tears ever did. Your boundaries become sacred now, not threats, not walls, but declarations of your worth. Where once you apologized for needing space, now you guard it with quiet strength. Where once you allowed guilt to drag you back into dysfunction, now you recognize guilt as a weapon and peace as your compass. You no longer justify your decisions, you simply live them. You no longer explain your no. It's not rebellion, it's resurrection. And because the narcissist has always survived on your inability to say no, your holy refusal becomes an indictment of everything they ever tried to control in you. Your healing begins to show in your presence, not in the things you say, but in what you no longer say, not in the people you confront, but in the ones you no longer grant access to. There is a calm in you now that they cannot manufacture, imitate, or replicate, a calm that comes from having been in the pit and learning that God dwells even there. A calm that says, I don't have to win. I don't have to explain. I'm already free. Perhaps the most profound sign of all is this: you no longer hate them. You're not filled with rage. You're not seeking revenge. There is no longer a war inside you demanding justice, because the war is over. You've surrendered it to a judge who never gets it wrong, and that surrender has produced something far more powerful than anger: peace. And peace is what they will never understand, because peace cannot be manipulated and peace cannot be controlled. It simply is. And in the presence of someone who has made peace with themselves and with God, the narcissist is exposed for who they always were: not powerful, not superior, but deeply afraid of the one thing they can't possess: a healed soul. You are no longer the person they met. You are no longer the person they used. You are no longer the person who broke beneath their hands and begged for mercy from someone who had none. You are the person who stood back up, not by your own strength, but by the grace of a God who refuses to leave his children in bondage. And now that grace walks with you into every room, covers every scar, speaks through your voice, and shines through your silence. You don't need to be dangerous. You already are. Not because of what you do, but because of what you carry, the evidence that you are never truly destroyed, only refined. What happens when a healed soul confronts the narcissist again? There comes a moment, sometimes expected, often not, when you come face to face with the very person who once fractured you. It may happen in person, through a message, a memory, or a chance encounter. And when it does, something unexpected occurs. The earth doesn't shake, the heavens don't roar, but your spirit stands still. Not frozen in fear, but grounded in something far greater than fear. You are not who you once were. You don't flinch. You don't brace. You don't prepare yourself to perform. You simply stand. And in that moment, all of heaven stands with you. The narcissist may enter the scene like they always did, confident, performative, rehearsed. They may try to smile with the same charm, speak with the same rehearsed sincerity, even replicate old patterns that used to work on you like spells. But this time, the spell is broken. You hear their voice, but it no longer moves you. You see their face, but it no longer pierces. You're not triggered. You're observing. And what you observe isn't strength. It's desperation wrapped in denial. Their energy feels hollow now, artificial, because once you've been in the presence of truth, you cannot be shaken by imitation. There is no dramatic confrontation, no vindictive speeches, no need to finally get your side out. There is no fire in your bones demanding revenge, only peace. You do not speak to prove anything. You speak, if you choose to, from a place of inner authority, grounded in the truth of who you are and whose you are. And that alone disarms everything, because the narcissist never knew how to handle a version of you that didn't need anything from them. Not their approval, not their attention, not even their apology. They may try the old tricks, shifting blame, rewriting history, suggesting you misunderstood. They may paint themselves as the victim or the savior, depending on which role worked best. But as they speak, you no longer feel the need to defend yourself. You recognize the pattern for what it is, a desperate attempt to re-enter a space they no longer belong to. And more than that, you realize they haven't changed, but you have. What once would have shattered you now only reminds you of how far you've come. And what they don't know, what they cannot see, is the cost of your healing. They cannot see the nights you cried out to God with nothing left in you. They cannot see the grief you carried like a shadow until the Holy Spirit lifted it. They do not know the days you chose forgiveness, not because they deserved it, but because you refused to be tied to their chains any longer. They didn't witness the sacred exchange, your sorrow for His strength, your shame for His glory, your confusion for His clarity. They only see the end result, the healed version of you standing in front of them with nothing left to offer but silence, peace, and the quiet echo of freedom. And that silence, that peace, that presence, it screams louder than any words ever could. It declares, "You don't define me anymore." It says, "I am no longer yours to manipulate." And perhaps most devastating to the narcissist, you are no longer relevant to my becoming. Because what God heals, He protects. And what He protects, He sets apart. You are not simply someone who got away. You are someone God pulled from the pit, washed clean, crowned with dignity and set on higher ground. You don't walk with arrogance, but with an authority they cannot imitate. Not because you're better, but because you're free. This is the final blow the narcissist never saw coming. Not your anger, but your elevation. They thought they would always hold a part of you, that their words, their memory, their absence would haunt you. But when you show up whole, when you carry peace like a shield and truth like armor, they are left to face what they fear most, their own powerlessness. Your healing is their exposure. Your presence, filled with the Spirit of God, becomes a mirror they cannot look into for long, because it reveals that everything they tried to build in you was undone by a force they could never control, the grace of God. So what happens when a healed soul confronts a narcissist again? The lie collapses, the mask slips, the illusion shatters, and all that remains is truth. You don't need to fight. You don't need to explain. You just need to stand. And in that quiet, immovable strength, you become what they never expected, a living testimony of God's power to heal what man tried to destroy. A word to the one still in the middle of healing. If you're reading this, and you're still in the in-between, not quite free, not yet whole, this is for you. If your days are marked by quiet ache and your nights by racing thoughts, if you keep questioning why you stayed, why you gave so much, why it still hurts even after they're gone, hear me. You are not weak. You are not failing. You are healing. Healing is not a straight line. It's not a neat, linear journey where you wake up stronger every day. Sometimes healing feels like breaking all over again. Some days you'll breathe peace. Other days you'll feel like you're suffocating in memories you never asked for, and that's okay. The middle is messy. The middle is sacred. The middle is where God does His deepest work, not in the resolution, but in the reconstruction. You may not see the progress, but heaven does. You're doing holy work every time you resist the urge to reach back out just to feel seen. Every time you choose to sit in the discomfort instead of running to old patterns. Every time you cry out to God instead of spiraling in self-blame. Every time you say no, whether out loud or in your heart, you are rebuilding a boundary the narcissist spent years tearing down. That's not weakness. That's war. That's worship. That's healing. And if today was a setback, if you woke up missing them, doubting yourself, or wishing the pain would just stop, please don't condemn yourself. Grief is not a betrayal of progress. Pain is not the enemy of growth. God is not disappointed in your tears. He catches every one. He records them. He redeems them. Because the God you serve is not looking for perfection. He's looking for surrender. He's looking for the one who says, God, I don't know how to get through this, but I trust you will carry me. And he will. He already is. You're not just recovering from a relationship. You're recovering from a distortion of reality, from spiritual confusion, from emotional trauma that was masked as love. That kind of unraveling takes time. So if you find yourself still triggered, still tender, still wondering why it's taking so long, remember this: you are untangling years of programming, decades of emotional training, and deeply rooted soul ties that were never meant to be there. Give yourself grace. God is not rushing you. The world might, your inner critic might, but not him. He knows every layer of your pain. He knows how long you kept silent, how hard you tried to keep the peace, how deeply you blamed yourself. And he's not asking you to get over it. He's asking you to give it to him. Bit by bit, breath by breath. He will not waste an ounce of your suffering. He will not leave a single scar untouched. He is not only the God of rescue, he is the God of rebuilding. There will come a day, maybe not today, maybe not even soon, when you'll look back and realize you haven't cried in weeks, when the thought of them no longer grips your stomach, when you laugh and mean it, when you enter a room and no longer scan it for danger, when peace is not just a concept, but your default. That day is coming. It may feel far, but it is being built underneath your feet even now. The seeds of that freedom are already taking root in your daily yes to healing. So if all you did today was survive, it was enough. If all you did was cry out to God, it was holy. If all you managed was getting through without sending the text, without apologizing for something you didn't do, without sacrificing yourself again to make someone else comfortable, then you're already walking in victory. Maybe quietly, maybe slowly, but surely, because God never begins a work he doesn't intend to finish. And he's not just going to bring you out, he's going to bring you back, restored, realigned, and redeemed. No, you're not there yet, but you're not where you used to be either. You are in the middle, and the middle is not meaningless. The middle is where the transformation happens. And the one who walks with you through this valley, he's not tired of you, he's not frustrated with you, and he's not going to let go. This is who you are now. You are not the same. You don't explain yourself to be heard anymore. You don't shrink yourself to keep the peace. You don't carry guilt that doesn't belong to you. The version of you that lived in fear of their reactions is gone. You've been through the fire, and God didn't just pull you out, he purified you in it. Now you walk with eyes that see and a heart that no longer bends to chaos. You speak when it matters and stay silent when it protects your peace. You no longer seek validation from a voice that once tried to destroy you. What they called cold is actually calm. What they call distant is discernment. You are no longer available to confusion, manipulation, or emotional captivity. You don't need revenge. You don't need recognition. You're free, and that freedom didn't come from getting the last word. It came from letting God have the final say. This is who you are now, not just healed, but holy, not just surviving, but whole. And no one can take that from you again. If this message touched your soul, comment below, God healed me and I will never be the same. Let your words be a light for someone else still in the dark. You're not just surviving, You're living proof that freedom is real and God is faithful. They lost access. God took over.